I'm Ken Evraire, and this is the leadership session, virtual potluck. Leadership, coaching, inspiring stories, game changers. We're going to connect with them, find out their why, and even dig deeper, not just pick their brain, but pick their hearts. And one guy who's driven by passion, and it has to be a great passion when you consider the journey that he's enjoyed in his life, and that is Ray Zahab, adventurer, ultra distance, long distance runner, a philanthropist, and a game changer in the community. Ray, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, for all of you who don't know, Ray is actually on a planet far, far away. So our wireless, our Wi-Fi connection is a little flimsy, but we got our fingers crossed. Where are you right now? Hey, where are you right now?
I'm like literally probably 15 kilometers from you in Chelsea, Quebec. I think, I've been saying this. People are doing so much communicating online that the bandwidth, like everything's like, even my phone doesn't work as well, I'm finding these days, right? I think it's just because everybody's online now. So they need to make that cable or whatever it is bigger, so that you can get more stuff in it.
I like to think it's the flux capacitor.
Yeah, exactly. That means something to you and I, Ken, but that's because I don't know how old you are, but because I'm old.
We're from generations past. Hey, exactly. For those who don't know you, let's do a background check. Explain the Coles Notes version of Ray Zahab, what he's about, what he's done, and what he hopes to accomplish.
Well, I'm an explorer. I'm an adventurer. I mean, it's what I do full time. I do long expeditions, and it's sort of like not vertical exploration, climbing mountains, horizontal exploration. So I run across deserts. I do supported expeditions in deserts, unsupported expeditions in the colder regions of the planet. Typically, I'm running across deserts at 60, 70 kilometers a day with limited resupplies, navigating across, sand dunes and mountains and salt pans and everything else for thousands of kilometers. Sometimes I'm alone. Sometimes I'm with someone. The Arctic expeditions hauling all the stuff in the sled that I would need to survive. But at the end of the day, all of the expeditions are connected via satellite to, at one time, mainstream media. I would connect to people through, CNN or CBC. Now it's all through social media and through live websites that are connected to classrooms. So I take my expeditions and I share my expeditions with classrooms around the world and bring those classrooms by virtue of technology virtually onto my expeditions. So they participate. So I'll get tens of thousands of students potentially learning and discovering the place that I'm in and the people that I'm meeting while I'm doing my expeditions. That in a nutshell is what I do. Where I started is a much different thing. As you know, I was a guy, I'm 51, no secret. I was 30 when I started all of this. I know you're probably thinking, God, he doesn't look a day over 32. And when I started this, I was a pack-a-day smoker. I mean, I was an unhealthy guy, and I was a very unhappy guy. You had alluded earlier in our conversation before getting on about playing a video that, from my website. And it sort of tells that story that I was a person who was a very unhappy person and really didn't know what they were going to do with the rest of their lives. Anything I ever started, I never completed. And I had no passion in my life really for anything. And it wasn't until I was turning 30, getting close to it. My brother, John, he's a year younger than I am. He's a trainer in, his wife and him have a training facility in Westboro in Ottawa called Continuum Fitness, shameless plug. And he was an outdoor athlete, climber, runner, trail runner, paddler, adventure racer guy. And I just saw in him this amazing transformation from someone who himself was unhappy at one point to someone who became very confident and in himself. And it was not just a physical transformation, it was a mental transformation. And I thought, wow, that's extraordinary. I mean, he just feels so good every day doing the things he does. Right. Maybe if I did the things he does, my life would be different. And that was really how I took the first steps. I mean, I wasn't really saying to myself one day, I woke up and said, oh, I think I'll be an ultra runner. I woke up one day and said, I'm sick of being unhappy. You know what I'm saying? And goalless. Yeah. And so,
maybe is it fair to say, though, for people who want to make that change, they go to the gym, they want to lose 10 pounds, they want to, whatever they want to do with they get so fixated on the goal that they don't realize that the real driver is their journey, the one step after one step after one step, and building muscle memory and mental memory. And because you don't wake up one morning and go, okay, I'm going to run across the Sahara. It does just,
No, you don't.
you can't make
but
that decision mentally and say I'm in.
But
it has to be something that runs much deeper than that, is it not?
yeah, I would say this: the person that has a goal
Yeah.
and they're focused on the goal, and they maybe are not feeling every step of the journey as it's happening, is not necessarily a bad thing, because you want to be able. One thing that I learned through the things that I do is my capacity to take risk increased. Like, I was willing to take chances on stuff that I would have never done before, and I was willing to, to put myself out there.
Yeah.
And maybe things go well, maybe they don't, but I no longer cared what anyone thought. I was doing these things because I wanted to do them for me. So you become more risk adverse the more times you hang it all out there, and the more times that you really challenge yourself, and you get good at that after a while. And that's what starts to break down the barriers of you being able to do other things in your life that right now you say, I could never do that. And I'm always amazed when somebody says that to me, I could never do that. Don't surprise yourself. Never be so sure, because it's amazing. I think that, and I've said this many times, that I believe people underestimate themselves physically, mentally, emotionally. I think everyone's capable of doing something amazing.
You know what the funny thing is? If you look at some of the old team photos when I was playing football growing up, you said, okay, look at these photos and pick out the guys you think would go pro or who would be successful. And very few people would have chosen me, because I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't the fastest, the strongest, anything like that. And I didn't stand out. But I had a belief, a faith in the journey. And I think part of the trap, and tell me if I'm wrong, but part of the trap is when you decide to change, when you make a change, something has to die. The transition, right? There's a transition. Something has to die for you to enjoy a rebirth of some sort. And if you don't let it die, you end up carrying it with you in this new chapter. And carrying it with you is like trying to run the Sahara, which is hard enough as it is because you're taking on a new challenge. But now you're trying to do it with a piano on your back.
Right. First of all, was that photo taken of you with, like, when you guys used to wear those leather helmets, the leather football helmets? Is that like
no.
Wasn't those days? Okay. So
I have a big poster of Jean-Claude Von Keely on my wall, so he's the first expeditioner I'm a big fan of. And I know I screwed up his name. It's my way of getting some retribution.
So yeah, do you have to get? As you know, there's always a sacrifice something that you're passionate about, and so but that's a good thing, like that's you sort of shed the old and you bring on the new, when you're doing these things. Anything that you do in your life that's a massive challenge, that's something that you think you can't do, that's truly transformational, is relative to you as an individual. So you can't really compare what you feel in going after something to anyone else. Like I talk to people that have been an Ironman world champion, and I've talked to people that are running their first 5K. And what they both experience in completion feels exactly the same, the way they describe it.
Yeah.
So when you're going through you're going after a goal, or you're trying to make something happen, and you're sort of, getting rid of the old and you're bringing on the new version of you, it could be a small thing, it could be a big thing, but it's very relative.
What I've always thought was interesting was people, when I used to watch Ironman on TV, and I used to watch all kinds of cool sports, and I'd see these elite athletes, and I'd say, they're extraordinary. They were born extraordinary. But then I realized that the majority of people who do extraordinary things are ordinary, but they find their extraordinary self, and they become so connected to that, and it's so valuable to them that they have no other option. It's like that opportunity to become extraordinary keeps tapping you on the shoulder. Now you're either going to do something about it and pursue it, win, lose, or draw, or you're going to ignore it, which is even worse than a loss.
Exactly. I didn't hear, if there was a question there, I didn't hear it because
No, it's just more of a statement in terms of just the need to not be risk averse. it's like climbing mountains. Or the first time you decided, the muscle memory
Yeah.
kicked in. Okay, I did 5K. Now I'm going to go do 10K or whatever it's going to be. And it's
Yeah.
a building. It's a lot like, have you ever been? Have you ever been to Barcelona?
No, I haven't.
It's a beautiful city. I ran the marathon there,
Uh-huh.
and they got a beautiful building called Sagrada Familia. It's a beautiful, beautiful cathedral, and it's taken hundreds of years to build.
Okay.
And the beauty doesn't come in the final product. The beauty was in the process of creating something.
Yeah, that's the one with the spires. Like it's got the
Yeah,
narrow.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
It seems
spires
great.
and
Yeah,
it's
it's
and
the process.
I'm not a big Catholic by any stretch of the imagination, but it struck me, uh, other human beings built that who are no longer with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it's sort of an interesting thing, not related necessarily to what we talk about, but if you think about as human beings,
Yeah,
what's left over
yeah,
from you know, any ancient history that we have as human beings, it's all in the arts, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what we leave each other. It's either literature, paintings, architecture. That is symbolic of what it means to be human. I found that is one of the interesting. People ask me what's always, you know, what's the most amazing thing you've seen when you've been on these expeditions all over the world, and I've been in dozens and dozens, 60, 70 countries,
yeah,
and it's history told through art, which
yeah.
is amazing, like architecture, because it's defining music. It defines what it means to be a human being, right? So I think back to the topic of what we're talking about, um, these collective pieces that come together that form this journey that someone might be on, and whatever challenge it is that they're taking on, because it's all up to the individual. It could be running a marathon, it could
Yeah.
be running a 5K, it could be learning to play a new piece of music, it could be something and learning to cook a new dish, right? Whatever the challenge is, it's finding passion in your life and the willingness. You know, if you're doing a job that you don't like to do,
Yeah.
it's drudgery going in there every day, and it's like, you know, like doing it just kills you to do it. But if you're doing something, what's the old saying? If you're living your passion, it's not like you're ever working a day. I can't remember. I never get those things right.
Yeah.
But the point is that, you know, when you're passionate in your life and you find happiness, when you're truly happy, you can look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm happy today. I found these 3 things in my life to be happy about today.
Yeah.
You won the lottery. I mean, you really have. I mean, that's when, you know, if you're doing things you love to do, or you have something in your life that's a component of your life that you're passionate about and you love to do, what else do you want?
We're a very powerful species, and when we're doing great things, we go on to do even greater things. But when we decide that we're going to sit in that place where we're not going anywhere, we are so powerful that we convince ourselves to stay there. And I think, and I had this conversation with Vern White, former police chief here in Ottawa. I said, subconsciously or consciously, we all wake up in the morning and we always ask ourselves the one question: are we in our right time in our right place? Because that's going to determine our next step, whether we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction, the right job, the wrong job, the journey versus spinning our wheels. And I didn't realize that until when I was in grade 12. I played football for the Ottawa Sooners. We lost the national championship, and I just had this burning desire. I wanted more. I wanted to get to university. I wanted to play pro football. I knew that would be the way to go. And I had a great conversation with my dad. And he said, okay, you're going to move to Toronto and do your grade 13 and live with your sister. And I moved to Toronto, Yonge and Eglinton area. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Toronto is obviously a much different city than Ottawa. Here in Ottawa,
Yeah.
if you have green hair in high school and you go back to the high school reunion, you're the guy with green hair.
Yeah.
Whereas I got to Toronto, I walked down Yonge Street from Eglinton all the way down to Queens Quay, and you see 12 people with green hair, and nobody blinks. And the world, and I learned that the world's going to keep spinning no matter what. Versus in a small, if you live in a small space like I did in Ottawa, you already feel like you were defined. But I got to Toronto, and all of a sudden, potential and possibility, and you can be in. And if you don't make the effort to pursue what your passion was, that's your fault.
Right.
And you probably you got the 4 stages of learning. And the Navy SEALs use the color code of readiness: white, yellow, orange, and red. And white is life is beating you up. Yellow is, okay, life's beating me up, I'm gonna do something about it. Orange is essentially I'm starting to master things, and now I'm at red where I'm alert and ready to go and I'm living. And that's what I didn't realize at the time, but that's where I shifted. And maybe
Mm.
that's what happened with you. fortunate that your brother had the gym, but at the same time, maybe that was serendipitous because he had the gym. And the
I don't even think it was anything that, to be honest with you, it was just even more basic. It was just like, sick of living the way I'm living, got to do something different or do nothing. A lot of the decisions we make in life can be distilled down to very, very simple criteria, right? I find as human beings try to overcomplicate and over-explain a lot of what it is that we do and how we operate. Yeah. I mean, when it comes right down to it, things are pretty basic, like think of it. It could be pouring rain and I've got a sore ankle and I'm supposed to be out trail running because that's my training program for that day. I can wake up that morning and go, well, now I'm not sure if I'm going to run because it's pouring rain. It's going to be cold. What if I get a cold? And my ankle's kind of sore. None of that matters. It's extraneous information. You know what matters? Are you going to run or are you not going to run?
Simple.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's as simple as that. There's no gray area in that decision. It's either, look, if I'm not going to run, there can be a multitude of reasons why I'm not going to run that day, right? A multitude of reasons, and all of them are valid.
Yep.
But they all come to the same conclusion: I'm not running that day. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we do in our life that we will make decisions, but we overcomplicate the thought process that needs to go into it in order to make the decision. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And I think that's the beauty of adventure. And something as simple as running, or look, in football, if the quarterback has to decide in a billionth of a second, are they going to throw that ball or not when 10 billion people are looking at them? Yeah. And if it's the wrong throw, or the receiver doesn't catch the ball, that might even be more stressful now that I'm thinking about it. I mean, they're both incredibly stressful situations, but you guys become very adept at making the decision. Intuition. You've done it so many times, what's the right decision. And if it doesn't work out that time, it's okay. It's going to be a pretty good reason why it didn't work out. But you just do. You just go for it. Right? So
being decisive is one thing. I think honing your craft is another thing, which inspires you to go the next day, the next day, the next day. If you're passionate about it, then again,
takes time.
The toughest day isn't that bad. Yeah.
That's the time process. Yeah. That's the investment. That's the front end of doing things that you're passionate about, taking risks and making those challenges and not overthinking. That's the dues you pay to get to that point, right?
It is.
But it doesn't come. You don't get there without doing and making decisions in your life that are for being happy and passionate and finding something that you really can dig your teeth into. Because at the end of the day, you have one life. You have one, I don't know what the average is, 77 years? 77 years on the planet, So I figure if the averages hold true and I don't have any underlying health conditions, at best I got 25 years left, right?
Yeah.
So I want to hammer in those 25 years and get as much done as I can.
I've always believed if there is a maker, if there's someone who greets you at a pearly gate and they say, how you feeling? They say, I'm pretty beat up. My heart's been broken 7 times. My hamstring, my shoulder. And they say, good job. Right? I've always believed that. And 5 knee surgeries, all the stuff I went through playing football, all that kind of stuff. It never felt great when I got injured, but it felt like I was still in my right place in the right time. And there was a moment where I realized it was time to walk away. And it was tough to let go of the game because it had defined me. And I was too scared to go on to something else. I'd rather dance with the devil I knew that now became unhealthy versus the devil that was waiting on the other side. That probably wasn't the devil, but I already manufactured in my head that it was a devil. So I kept trying to get back to football after 5 knee surgeries and everything else. But I want to ask you this, though. Muscle memory, mental memory, you've got it down. And you decide, okay, I'm going to run across the desert. This is my next expedition. And people see it and they go to Ray's website and they see all the stuff and they go, man, he makes it look easy. But I think they lose sight of the fact that you can still get your ass kicked pretty good.
Well, it's not that I make it, you know what? We talked about this earlier on before the show started, and we were talking about technology and how it's being used and content that you're creating and the messaging that you're putting out. There was a time when if I was doing a live satellite feed and doing an interview to CNN, for example, I did a couple in the Gobi Desert. And it was happening in real time. And that is, and so the message is delivered in real time as to what's happening in that moment. It could be bad, it could be good, it can be whatever.
Right.
But when we're creating content now for social media, you're able to also, in your own way, emphasize that part of the content that you're creating, because it's such a small bandwidth of time to share.
Mhm.
And I have told myself since we're running the Sahara project, since then, it's been like 17,000 kilometers in total that I've done on foot on expeditions, that I don't want to just share how hard something is or the difficulties. Let's just assume when you read that I ran 2,000 kilometers across the Gobi Desert, that obviously it's hard to do. So I don't want to just talk about how hard it is, how hard it is hard. I want to talk about and share the parts of the story that make it accessible for people to realize that they can go and do amazing things themselves, right?
Yep.
That I don't want to always be out there sharing the drama and how dramatic it is. I'd rather share something, a video, a clip of me, cruising through one of the 3 communities or whatever it was that I ran through in the Gobi. And I met up with these kids, and there was some like this, play yard equipment that we were all jumping on, trying out. And it was funny. And I just was in the moment, and I'm hanging out with these kids. But before that, there was 1,000 kilometers of struggling across the desert. But I'd rather show you that time in that community, hanging out with these kids, because it's more fun. And then I get people reaching out to me saying, oh, wow, that's something I think I could go do. And I want them to go do and discover, what they want to do, not just always the blisters and the grit and all that stuff,
Is the message, you're going to walk 17,000 miles or kilometers anyway. You might as well do it your way. And forge
sort
your
of.
path.
I mean, I think the message from me, if you're asking, I think that's a valid message, what you're saying. But for me, it is that in each and every one of us is the capacity to do something extraordinary. It's not that I'm out there doing something that's better or whatever. I am no different than anyone else. I am just someone who's found something that they love, that they're somewhat good at, tried a lot of things that I wasn't, and found the thing that I like, the challenges within. And every one of us has that in our life. We just have to kind of discover and figure out what it is.
It's funny. When I left football, I was hell-bent on running a marathon. And the reason is because there was a guy who played for the Minnesota Vikings named Alan Page. He was a defensive lineman, 6'4", 280-pound type of character. And in a bid to help his wife quit smoking, he decided to take up running. He jogged with her while she ran to help quit smoking. And she was successful at it, but he was bit by this bug. He was bit by the running bug, but on the surface, but he was also bit by the bug that was journeying on your own, and it was on you. Because in football and team sports, you can win or lose the game, play bad, play good, right? I can have a great game and the team can still lose. I can have a bad game, the team still win. But when you're at that start line, and when I remember my first marathon and 28,000 people in Honolulu, right? 5:30 in the morning, and the truth taps you on the shoulder, because you can tell everybody you're running a marathon and bragging, and you can tell everybody you're doing training and bragging, but if you haven't, you can lie to everybody else, but the truth is going to again tap you on the shoulder, and that's could be an empowering moment, because when he says, "Have you trained?" and yes, you have, then you're good. But if you haven't, you set yourself up for a long day.
Yeah, sure. Of course. But that's in anything that we take on as individuals, you're going to find that, right? And it's pretty much, across the board with whatever someone's doing when they're, again, it's that whole thing about hanging yourself out there. When you're as an individual doing something in that way, yeah, for sure. It becomes abundantly clear. But also, I think the difference, because I've done solo expeditions and I've done expeditions with teammates, and I think that and I've been asked which is harder.
Yeah.
And they're both equally hard. It's the experience in the moment. Solo can be very, very hard. Solo in the Arctic I did in January. It was super duper hard. Yeah. Just this past year. But when you're with another person on an expedition or doing something that's challenging, you are working collectively to a common goal. So if they're not doing so hot,
Yeah.
you got to help out, pick up the slack or whatever you've got to do and balance each other out, which is again very challenging. And what it does is it redefines who you are as an individual, because you see when there's tension and difficulty, you really see how you are going to act and how how you can rise to a challenge as opposed to when you're alone.
I want to get to a specific moment from the Running the Sahara documentary that was done. But for those who are joining us or wondering who I'm talking to, it's a Canadian adventure ultra distance runner and founder of the nonprofit Impossible to Possible platform. There's Ray Zahab. Now he's the recipient of the Meritorious Service Cross of Canada. He's honored to be Explorer in Residence of the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, and he's a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society as well. And over 14,000 kilometers. He's been all over the world. Your journey has taken you all over the place. But I remember in that documentary, it was wonderful. And you and two teammates, two friends, allies, and you got close to the finish line. And I need to know the truth. When Charlie left to go on his own near the finish line in the last leg of the journey, what was going on through your mind? Because my first thought was that, and it didn't capture that in the documentary, but it almost sensed like a bit of a betrayal for him, because it was supposed to be the three amigos, and he had gone off on his own. What was the story there behind?
Well, you look at, I mean, you've been in I'm sure in the games that you were playing, and you're exhausted, and your teammates or whatever, you're not getting along, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were exhausted.
Yeah,
we were on fumes on that last day. So everybody is, you're not thinking clearly is the bottom line, and you don't know what and you're over, you're overthinking everything, right? And in reality, there's nothing for us to even think about because we all finished together. Do you know what I mean? It was not a big deal for any of us. It wasn't a big deal, So, but what the documentary did so well is it captured, as you said, that moment in our minds where we had this, oh my gosh, what's happening moment. And then it also captures the end where we were like, yeah, whatever, it was nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we can figure all that out, but that's what expeditions are like. Like, you have to remember, you're seeing an hour and 40 minutes. You're talking about 111 days, right? Of 70 kilometers every single day average. That was the average. And so, I mean, we never had a day off. You're out there all the time with these people. And you know what? I've done Arctic expeditions and Antarctic. I went to the South Pole with two other guys. Yeah. And we spent every moment together, all in the same tent all the time. Like, never more than 3 feet apart for 33 days. So, these can be very stressful situations.
Oh, it will be. Inevitably, it's going to be stressful, right?
But you also find out who you are.
Yeah.
In these situations, and it defines who you are. And when it gets very stressful, so stress also. I mean, it's not good for us from a physical perspective, but it teaches you things about yourself. Like, look at the COVID right now. Everybody's stuck at home.
That's what I wanted to get to, this segue. How are you managing this? And anything you can share with people. Say, how do you navigate these waters? Because we're in a chapter of the unknown.
Look at every I'm shamelessly plugging on your event, but it's every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Yeah. I've been doing a Facebook Live, and I've been talking about that. And people can find my page, and there's a little blue check beside my name. I use my public page for it. And I'll tell you something. We because of expeditions, I mean, that's the one thing, one primary thing from expeditions that I've been able to take and inject into this is that breaking it down. We're looking, the overarching goal is this will end. And we know that's going to happen. Eventually, are they going to get back to 100% normal? We don't know. Is there a new normal? We're not sure yet. Mm-hmm. But we're for certain that this will get to a point where we can call it the end. Okay? We know but it's an abstract. It's an uncertain time. Mm-hmm. And it's the uncertainty right now, Ken, that everybody fears, right? It's more the uncertainty, Ken, that people are fearing in their jobs, uncertainty in their health, uncertainty for when the kids are going back to school, uncertainty.
Right.
That's actually the scary part of it all, right? And so not knowing is worse than knowing. You know what I mean? And so what I've been asking people and sharing something that I believe is that you break it down into smaller, I'm going to get through this day, you
Yes.
know? And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation. But when you get good at breaking it down into, let's get through this day, here's kind of a rough layout of the way I want my day to go, especially if you have the kids. We got our 2 daughters, they're home from school. We try to do, you know, in the middle of the day, we do a little bit of homeschooling, and then we go out running with them in the afternoons, right? And then we make dinner together, we have dinner, you know, read a book or watch a show. It's bedtime. We start it over again in the morning. I start training, my wife trains, and then we get going from there. Those days start to snowball, and one leads to another. And one of the primary goals that I've set for myself and for the people that I'm talking to on the Facebook Live is the health goal right now, because I speak, it's mainly runners that are showing up, right? But the health goal right now is not to be in the best shape of your life to race in a marathon, but instead it's to be the best health of your life, to get as healthy as you can, mentally and physically, to be able to take this on and embrace the challenge of where we're at right now. Because the options, like the run on the rainy day, here's your options: embrace it or fight it, you know? Get some sleep at night or lose sleep every night worrying. You know, all my income from last year to this year is basically gone, right? I mean, you know, I do a lot of speaking, corporate speaking. That's how I take care of my family. That's how I pay the bills. Nothing happening right now, you know, like obviously no large gatherings. The races that I organize in Gatineau Park where I live, all canceled. Maybe the September race we're going to have. My guiding business, the Catholic One, you know, we just got back from our last trip from Siberia with clients of mine. And then now no trips now until maybe September, October, we start up again. So I could lose sleep over that for sure. I could be totally stressed about it, but I'm at a point where I'm like, that's not going to help in any possible way. So instead, I've got to look at this from a perspective of things will get better. And I'm going to go one day at a time. And my goal right now, be as healthy as I can possibly be, so that I'm ready to launch when I'm going on my next expedition, or I'm doing my guiding with my clients, or a youth expedition with the foundation, whatever. I'm ready to move, you know?
You're being productive versus counterproductive, your own worst enemy. And I always use the analogy when I talk to my kids about, okay, I know we have a goal, and this is what we want to get through this isolation and this global pandemic, but we have to break the season, say a hockey season of 82 games. We have to break it down into chapters so that we could step back 2 days from now and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, adapt, change the plan a little bit, still focused on our destinations to get through this global pandemic, but to be able to, again, there's no straight line from point A to point B, right? It's always going to be a long, Paul McCartney, long winding road, and you have to be open to the idea of being agile. When you go on your expeditions, people say, well, why doesn't you just walk straight? Why don't you just go straight, right? Why does the path just go the direct path along the 401 all the way to Toronto? And it just doesn't work that way. So you have to have an appetite and a willingness to be agile and adaptable, not locked into the destination, but really locked in on the need to morph and grow and change. Because the fact of the matter is, there's no such thing as a perpetual motion machine. Mathematicians and scientists have tried to prove one, that it can be created, but humans are perpetual motion machines. And to walk into one lane without any thought of adapting, changing, looking at the map a second time, is foolish.
You know, it's totally true. And, you know, on the straight line thing, you know, I do try to take the straightest line I possibly can when I'm crossing a desert. And it's interesting that you say, you know, you got to sometimes do this because you don't know what's going to come or what's going to happen. I've had situations, like I do the navigation typically on expeditions, whether it's my own expedition or I'm with my teammate. And there's been times when you have come to a canyon that's not on a map, right? And what are you going to do, right? And you can give up, or you can find a way around. And we always find a way around. Like, I've been right to the end on expeditions, physically on my hands and knees. I can't take another step. I've been there, and thinking to myself, okay, now it's over. But then something happens, and there's a little spark of, there's a little flame that said, not quite yet, you know, and you figure out a way around it, and you keep moving forward. Each day that we're out here and sort of, you know, making our way through the COVID, and we're at home and we're doing our things. What I've said to people is, a great example, my buddy Stefano, who I've done expeditions with, he's in Italy. His community that he lives in was one of the ground zero red zones, right? Like, that was one of the first ones shut down. So they went into lockdown. He's a big guy. He has 3 daughters, you know, his whole family. They're in this small house in Italy. His backyard is like 5 meters by 7 meters by 5 meters by 7 meters, something like that. And he goes out there, and he said, I said, what are you doing every day? He says, you know, Ray, since my daughters, they skip, like, they're all athletes. They skip. So now I've taken up skipping, as, you know, I'm trying to learn to skip. He said, you should try sometime. It's crazy. It's such a crazy workout. I said, I've never tried it. And because he told me that, I took my daughter's skipping rope and I tried, you know, and so he's created a challenge for himself and a routine that has gotten him through every day. He'll run, like, you know, little circles in his backyard just to do it, right? Every person's got a different way of taking on the challenge. I've seen people on Instagram, people I know, who are very creative, and I'm just seeing them hammer out artwork like you can't believe in this time, because they're pushing the boundaries.
Are you seeing a lot of that, where you can see people adjusting and adapting, saying, okay, there's 2 ways we can go about this. We can go about it being proactive and not sit on the couch going, oh my God, isolate, 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 don't breathe on me, and living in fear, versus living with competency. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you have a choice of, like I said before, losing sleep at night over this and worrying about every aspect of it, the uncertainty, everything, or looking at things, not foolhardily throwing caution to the wind and saying everything is coming up roses, but looking at sort of the more positive side of this and embracing it instead, and saying, all right, look, we're in this thing. It's not going away. So I may as well do something that is going to have a healthy, whether that be mental or physical, outcome from it. Learn something new, read a book. I cleaned out my gear room. You should have seen that. There could be entire new species of rodents living in my gear room. It had been so long since I cleaned it out, but I'm doing that. It's just another thing. I'm doing things that I've never had time to do before. And instead of looking at it as a time filler, I'm looking at it as, well, yeah, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. So you gotta look at things from that perspective. Glass is half full. You gotta look at it that way, because any other way ends in not a good spot.
To quote Gino Vanelli, people gotta move.
There you go again. You got Back to the Future, and now you're talking Gino Vanelli. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And here's the funny thing: all those people our age who spent time arguing with their friend in Hull at 4 a.m. after having a poutine and drinking a Shalimar and all those places, going, I'm walking home. I'm no cat fair. I'm walking home. They may be inspired now because of you, because they walked 7 kilometers to get home from Hull because they had no cat fair. If they can do that, they can walk.
I'm surprised you made it. Back in those days, it was pretty sketchy walking home.
It wasn't a drunken stupor. It was a training session. Tell me about Impossible to Possible.
So Impossible to Possible is a nonprofit organization that myself, my wife Kathy, and my buddy Bob Cox, we started this organization in 2008. And the goal is to take young people on expeditions around the world, 100% free of charge. Doesn't cost them a penny. Doesn't cost any of the faculty, the teachers that come with us to teach. Doesn't cost them anything. And the goal is to take these expeditions and model them sort of on mini versions of my own expeditions. So I crossed the length of the Atacama Desert, for example, in summer 2011. It was roughly 1,200 kilometers north to south. Take a group of youth ambassadors into the best 200 kilometers of that desert. And they ran the length of it and connected a curriculum that was relatable to the area. I forget what we studied. Oh, we studied astronomy when we were on the Atacama expedition.
Because that's in Chile, right?
It's in Chile. It's where all the observatories are.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, well, let's do this adventure in the Atacama Desert. Let's make it about astronomy and the sky, the nighttime sky. Let's make it about that, and then let's connect that story to the classrooms. Then you've got our youth ambassadors, 16 to 21 years of age, communicating with kids in the classrooms about this crazy run that they're on, but also about what they're learning from visiting with astronomers and experts and doing lab sessions out in the desert and, you know, identifying stars and all that jazz. So that's what we do. Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing, because the kids are participating. When they get to the finish line, that experience, they go on to do greater things, but also inspire other people. So, you know what, if he can do it or she can do it, I want to do that. And then you get to see the world. And if you're seeing the world, then you're walking a mile in someone's shoes. So when you come back home, you sit down, and you live in Chelsea, right, and you sit down, you look at the news, your perspective on the world globally,
yeah,
is far more connected versus, well, you know, here I am, and it's the democratic way, it's the liberal way, it's the North American way, it's the communist way, it's whatever it is. You take those blinders off, and you see it's about humanity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's, you know, it's the one thing when I do a lot of speaking at schools as well, which, by the way, for schools that are out there, it's 100% free for me to go into schools. I don't charge anything to speak at schools. And students will ask me, you know, if there was one, you know, bit of advice that you would give to the a younger generation.
Right.
And it's simply travel when you can, travel as much as you can afford to, time-wise and money-wise. Travel, meet people, learn about different cultures. Because as you say, it gives you a holistic approach and view of the world, you know, and the news that you're hearing and digesting. Because, you know, a lot of what you hear and see, you know, is not exactly, it's portrayed through the lens that it is, you know, told through, right? You know? So, and then the other thing that I've been doing lately, and I alluded to before, I said I just got back guiding clients in Siberia, is this Capic one. I can, you can see my sweatshirt, my logo. Okay. And that's basically, over the years, I've had so many people our age and maybe younger, which is a lot more younger, that have come to me and said, hey, listen, I want to go on a youth expedition with Impossible to Possible. And I'm like, well, you're not 21 years or younger, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so over the years, people had convinced me to finally start something for adults, and that's what Capic One is. And so basically, I'm taking people on expeditions around the world, remote places, super remote. It's a little bit more edgier than the youth-based expeditions, but it's going into places. And we just did one, for example, again in the Atacama Desert, different region, in December. And I took a group of people who they've done a lot of things in their lives already, right? Like some of them are athletes. They've experienced different things. They've succeeded in different things, but they want to still learn about themselves. And I took them into the desert, and I taught them how to navigate, you know, how to use their garments, how to read a map, how to get from point A to point B. And then the roles flipped on the expedition, and then they were the ones leading me through the mountains and all this. We had just a blast. So that's my other recent project that I'm working on.
I agree. Travel's so important. I remember going to it was Dominican, and with a bunch of friends, and it was one of those all you can eat, all you can drink, because everybody's putting on 20 pounds in 7 days. And I was stir crazy, so I decided to get a bag of candy and stuff, and I was going to go hike in the mountains, and up in the mountain just that oversaw the resort. And I went up there, and a guy pulls up in his car, a little beat up car, and one of the locals says, well, what are you doing? I said, well, you know, I'm just hiking. He says, okay. I said, I'll be your guide. I said, great. You be my guide. I'm going to give you $20 American, which was a big deal. And all the kids were coming back from school. So they had their school uniforms on, because schooling in Mexico is free. They're all in uniforms, but they take the uniforms off and put all their dirty clothes on. So it was a real spiritual sort of enlightenment for me, because he took me on a tour. I met so many great people. Kids got candy, had a couple of beers with people, got to know their stories and stuff. And I remember walking down the hill, and I felt like I was Moses coming down the mountain. Right? One of these moments, I get to the bottom thinking my life has changed completely. And there's a tour of people, obviously tourists on donkeys going by. But one guy yells, hey, it's Ken Evraire. Like, Jesus, can't get away from it. But you're doing some fantastic stuff, Ray. And a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, right?
Sure does.
So,
Yeah, you're not going to get there unless you take the first step.
well, I applaud you. You're an authentic warrior. It's easy to be a warrior and go to battle every day, but when you go to battle with a purpose that's driven, that's connected to your soul, it says a lot about you, and it says a lot about what you're doing for people that you're going to meet up along the way on your journey. So I am so thankful for your time today. And I
Thank you,
wish you the
Ken.
best of luck in
Thank
the
you very
next
much.
chapter, wherever it takes you. And it's going to take you all over the world, I'm sure.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And you know, at some point we'll get together and we'll go to one of those old timey movie theaters where they play the black and white clips with sound and music, and we'll look at some of your football, you know, some of the football games.
Well, let's do it. No, the one regret I have is one, there's not a lot of footage of me playing very good football in those. And second, I had
Come on, you know
I had
you're
an
a
opportunity
legend
to
in
go
the
on
sport.
water aid and do the Kilimanjaro hike.
Okay,
And
yeah.
at that time, I was going through some minor heart issues. I was in AFib a lot, so I had to get some procedures done at the Heart Institute. So now that I'm back to 100%, I'm thinking, well, you know, might have to revisit the idea of getting out there and seeing the world a little more. And
right here, Ken, give me a call.
I'm going to
come with us.
See how I segued that?
Come with us.
See how I connected with you?
Yeah,
there?
I like it. You come on out with us. The invitation's open.
Much love, Ray. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the time.
I appreciate it. Chris
Cheers.
Cornwell producing this segment. Thank you. You are the man. Ken Evraire, this is the leadership potluck segment. And next week, an all-star trio of ladies, including Joanne Pollock, the first female GM of a professional football team, Leanne Lang, and Alyssa Lansdell, and more. So stay tuned. We have more segments coming up. Big shout out to Ray. Thank you very much. And we hope you have a very happy, safe, and a great weekend. Take care.